Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. We're here to talk about electoral reforms and specifically why ranked choice voting may be a better alternative to the current first-past-the-post system. So in the next 15 minutes, I'll walk you through the problems of the existing system, how ranked choice voting works, and why ranked choice voting might be beneficial to the current democracy. Now, let's start with the status quo plurality voting, also known as first-past-the-post system. In the first-past-the-post system, voters select one candidate, and the candidate with the most votes win, regardless of whether they have a majority. In this example of the best Pokemon election, Charmander would have won the election even by a slim margin to Pikachu because it has more votes to Pikachu. This system dates back to antiquity. It was used in the 14th century in England to elect members in the House of Commons. Even up to date, this system is widely used, especially in countries which were once part of the British Empire. Specifically, 44 countries use first-past-the-post system to elect national leaders. Before we start analyzing the current system, I would like to throw out a fundamental question. What makes the voting system fair? I would like to suggest that there are three key principles that we can start with: majority voting, the ability to avoid vote splitting and spoiler effect, and the ability to avoid duopoly and power concentration. Specifically, we want that the election result should reflect the majority's will, which is what's required by democracy. In addition, we also want that adding an additional candidate should not change the outcome, essentially because adding another candidate would not fundamentally change the preferences of each voters to the candidate. And finally, we also want the system to prevent power concentration and allow diverse candidates to compete fairly. Now let's explore why first-past-the-post system fails to meet these goals. First, let's start with the majority voting requirement. In a perfect system, we want that the candidate with the majority of the vote wins the election. However, if you're selecting the representative in the parliament, you can and frequently do get situations when the majority of the country do not vote for the party that ended up holding the power. Take the UK, for example. In the last 100 years, there were 21 times when a party holds the majority of parliamentary seats. However, in only 2 of those instances when the party actually gets the majority of the votes. This means that a party with fewer votes can end up controlling the government, which does not align with the principle of majority votes. Second, moving on to spoiler effect. First-past-the-post system usually causes additional candidate to split votes by stealing votes from votes of similar parties, affecting outcomes in unintended ways. Take the 2000 US election as an example, which was essentially a competition between Al Gore and George W. Bush. Bush has more votes in Florida, but by a ridiculously small margin, around 600 votes. There was at the same time also another candidate on the ballot, Rafe Nader, who was a Green candidate and was certainly on the left of both Bush and Gore. Nader in Florida got almost 100,000 votes. As the result come out, the voter were devastated that by voting Nader instead of Gore, they actually ended up electing Bush. We can notice that all voters for Nader usually mostly prefer Gore to Bush, but in the first-past-the-post system, they have no way to express that preference because you can only vote for one candidate. Moving on to the third feature, first-past-the-post does poorly in limiting power concentration as well. More often, voters have to vote strategically to avoid wasting their votes. If a smaller party has little chance of winning, voting for them feels like a wasted vote, and therefore the voters will end up supporting other candidates. This trend extends to the second smallest, third smallest party, etc., until only party that remains in the competition will be the party with the highest probability of winning. As a result, this dynamic leads to concentrated power within larger parties, where only 2 parties dominate and discouraging competition and innovation in the political system. This effect is so well spread that it has a name called Dulles law. Now, let's move to ranked choice voting and explain why ranked choice voting can fix the issues that was explained above. There are 5 features of ranked choice voting. First, voters will rank their preferences for candidate, And the fundamental principle of winning in ranked choice voting is that a candidate must win more than half the vote to be declared the winner. However, if no candidate wins the majority vote, the candidate with the least vote would be eliminated, and the voters who select the eliminated candidate would be considered for the votes of their second preferences. This process repeats until one candidate secures the majority of the votes. Now let's illustrate this process by the Pokemon election that we just used before. Now in this election, there are four candidates: Psyduck, Pikachu, Charmander, and Squirrel. We can see that now no candidate has more than half of the votes. So we start by eliminating the candidate with the least vote, Psyduck. Then we moved the votes for Psyduck to the second preference vote to other three candidates. Now we still do not have a candidate with more than half the votes, so we continue to eliminate the second candidate with the least vote, Charmander, and allocate his vote to Pikachu and Squirrels. After this round, we notice that Pikachu has more than 50 votes and thereby wins the election. Now, let's look at why ranked choice voting has more advantages and benefits over first past the post system, specifically in terms of the three tasks that we gave before. First, in terms of majority voting, it definitely ensures majority voting because with ranked choice voting, the winning candidate is guaranteed to have the support of the majority, which is how ranked choice voting is defined. In addition, research also shown that ranked choice voting generates relatively high turnout rates. When New York City used ranked choice voting in its 2021 primaries, that election actually has the highest turnout in the last 30 years. In addition, research also shown that candidates in ranked choice voting cities are more likely to reach out to voters in person than those cities that does not use ranked choice voting because they want to secure their second and third preference vote. This allows the voters and in the countries with ranked choice voting understand more about what's happening in the politics instead of being misled by misinformation and political propaganda. Now, moving on to spoiler effect and vote splitting. Ranked choice voting also fixed the spoiler effect problem. As seen with the 2000 US election, first past the post allowed a third-party candidate to ruin the chance of the candidate that most agree with. However, in the ranked choice voting system, votes for Nader would have been gone to Gore instead of Bush, making Gore instead of Bush the winner of Florida. Finally, moving on to the third characteristic, duopoly. Ranked choice voting also avoids concentration of power because now voters no longer need to be concerned about wasting their votes. In fact, ample evidence actually show that ranked choice voting improves representative in politics. For example, cities with ranked choice voting has better overall electoral outcomes for women and people of color, and also independent and third-party candidates perform better under ranked choice voting systems. Ranked choice voting also reduces legislative polarization by allowing space for both moderate, conservatives, and liberal candidates and other voters to select candidates in proportion to their overall representation in the electorate. Other than having benefit to voters, ranked choice voting also encourages more positive campaigning for the candidate. Since candidates are now incentivized to appeal to second and third choice voters, they tend to focus more on building coalitions rather than attacking opponents. In Minneapolis, for example, ranked choice voting has been shaping their election for nearly 9 years, and the result was quite optimistic. Candidates are far more likely to focus on discussing policies and priorities rather than resorting to attacks. This is because in ranked choice voting, winning isn't just about being the top choice. It's about securing those crucial second and third choice rankings. One memorable moment is from the 2013 mayor debate. Instead of engaging in typical fighting in debates, the candidates literally linked their hands and sung Kumbaya together, showing the effect for them to appeal broadly rather than alienate potential voters. In addition, ranked choice voting also reduces political polarization. By encouraging candidates to appeal to a broader range of voters, ranked choice voting often results in election of more centralist, consensus-driven candidates. In Alaska, for example, after voters approved the system in 2020, it was put to be used in statewide election in 2022. and Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, who faced intense backlash for voting to impeach former President Trump after January 6th insurrection, was actually re-elected, which is a significant surprise because similar Republicans were being ousted in party primaries elsewhere. Now, let's move on to discuss how ranked choice voting reforms is happening in the current politics. Now, 51 districts use ranked choice voting for all voters in public election, collectively reaching nearly 40 million voters. This includes 2 states, Alaska and Maine, 3 counties, and 46 countries. Beyond these public elections, ranked choice voting is also used in 62 jurisdictions across 24 states, including for party-run primaries, special elections, and for military and overseas voters. As shown from statistics above, ranked choice voting reforms tends to succeed more often at local level elections. This is because localized campaigns can often focus more effectively on educating voters about the benefit and mechanism of the system, which reduces confusion and builds trust in the system. Despite this success, opposition to ranked choice voting remains strong in some areas. This is the result of the 2024 ballot measures that proposes the reform of a combination of open primaries and ranked choice voting. As you can see from the statistics, the result was a combination of wins and losses. There was significant wins in areas like Washington. However, in states like Oregon and Colorado, the proposal to implement ranked choice voting was rejected. In addition, there are some anti-ranked choice voting efforts in Alaska, Bloomington, and Missouri. Alaska and Bloomington voted to keep ranked choice voting. However, in Missouri, it actually passed a measure that bans ranked choice voting, although no ranked choice voting is being used in any city whatsoever in that state. In general, ranked choice voting faces challenges because bipartisan opposition usually labels this reform as confusing or biased. In addition, in a polarized climate of the politics right now, skepticism usually led most voters to reject changes rather than embrace it. Now, towards the end of this presentation, I would like to reflect on how we can promote a better democracy with the lens of ranked choice voting. Today's main takeaway are above. I highlighted how the current plurality voting system has systematically flawed, and ranked choice voting that involves allowing the voters to rank their preferences mitigates issues such as vote splittings and splitter effect, and also allow for reduced polarization and power concentration. I would also like to argue that while implementing ranked choice voting is challenging, starting at the local level with increased education might pave the way for more effective reform. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Hi. Great talk. You kind of touched on it a little bit at the end of your presentation, but in terms of the barriers to actually implementing ranked choice voting, do you see education as the main issue, or more the structural ways that parties in power are already trying to hold on to that power, and how can we operate within the current system to move forward towards that future? Yeah,
that's an excellent question. Thank you very much. I think that, as I talked about before, education is definitely something we need to focus on in terms of pushing ranked choice voting in some local area of elections, which I think is more feasible given how, as you talked about, the structure of politics right now, especially for some conservative politicians and voters are more conservative about bringing changes. However, focusing on more local, smaller range changes might be an effective way both to allow ranked choice voting to take effect on the local level and exposing more voters and people in general to the idea of ranked choice voting. I think the key barrier, other than having party dynamics, is that ranked choice voting at the first sight seems a bit confusing because you need to vote the candidate instead of merely voting for one. However, having more local level reform successful can be an excellent evidence that this is in fact not that confusing as it sounds. In fact, in a lot of local level elections with ranked choice votings, research of the voters has shown that they actually didn't find it, around 80% did not find the election confusing at all, which means that probably having more reforms on the local level can reduce this, I guess, this confusion on a more larger national level to push the reform forward.
Thank you so much for your talk. It's pretty insightful. I was wondering, is there any investigation like currently into those areas which has promoted ranked choice voting? Are there like any traits that's common in these areas?
That's an excellent question. I haven't really read into that much research on the specific trait that distinguish area with ranked choice voting and those that did not. Professor Wall, do you have?
So what's the question again? What the trait?
What's the traits for the areas that has used?
They're more educated.
Thank you.
There was an initiative to pass ranked choice voting in Massachusetts 2020, and it was defeated because COVID had hit and the campaign couldn't get out to educate voters. And when you look at the map of who voted for and against it, so 45 voted for, and it's Metro Boston, and then like the, Western Mass, UMass, Holyoke, Smith, they immersed all this educated, and the rest was 55% against. And it really exactly split according to sort of education profile.
Do you think ranked choice voting has, do you think it might be able to, let me rephrase my question, like, would it be better renamed as instant runoff rather than ranked choice voting as a way of like spreading it or to be more specific?
I would say if I understand correctly, instant runoff might be a specific way of ranked choice voting, but I think that potentially instant runoff sounds more confusing than ranked choice voting because in ranked choice voting, the word rank kind of explain what is going on. However, I do think that given different education level and also different education initiative that's happening that highlights different aspect of this ranked choice voting measures, potentially different names might be helpful in explaining what's going on. So I guess that in general probably depends on what area we're specifically targeting. But I do think that ranked choice voting, the name of ranked choice voting is explicit in terms of highlighting the fact that it's ranked choice. And basically the primary difference is highlighted in the name. So I guess that's probably like quite explicit. Yeah.